Hey guys, welcome to Digit.in, and today's review is actually a little different than the usual stuff. Basically, sitting in my car, cranking the AC up to the max so that to simulate sort of wind noise, what it would be like if you're outdoors and shooting on a very windy day, or even in your room for that matter, with the AC blowing and the fan on. So let's go ahead and check it out. Today we're reviewing the Sony ZV-1. Now this is a point and shoot camera that Sony's developed specifically for vloggers. So that's sort of the style I'm going to be shooting this review in. For starters, we're actually recording this entire review on the ZV-1 itself. Why, you may ask? Well, the answer to that comes after you like and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any future notification updates from us. Now here's the thing. Sony is pushing the ZV-1 as the vlogger's ultimate camera, which basically means that it should be able to do whatever a vlogger needs to do, which basically means being able to record this video. So in order to test its capabilities, or rather in order to show you what it can do, I'm recording this video on the ZV-1. And here's what's going on. For starters, I'm using the onboard microphone and not using any external microphones to record my audio. Secondly, there is no studio lights being used in this room. This is just completely lit by natural light and room lighting, nothing else. Thirdly, the camera is on fully auto mode so that you know exactly how it will behave when you can no longer control it with your own hands. So there is that. Additionally, what I'm also doing is recording the same thing. We're using an A7 Mark III with a Sony 24mm f1.4G master lens. So we've got a very similar frame setup on the Sony A7 Mark III as well, and we can actually take a look at how the quality translates across the two cameras. Lastly, both the cameras are shooting in 4K because that's sort of the rage these days, so 4K it is. Now let's go over the specs of the ZV-1. There's actually quite a lot to talk about here. For starters, the ZV-1 packs a 1-inch 20 megapixel CMOS sensor. This is the BSI CMOS sensor. It's got 5 stops worth of image stabilization, which is actually pretty impressive when you consider the fact that the lens on this is a 24 to 70 millimeter lens, of course in the 35 millimeter equivalent range, within the aperture of f1.8 to f2.8. What this means is that this camera can not only produce good results in relatively low light, but also because it can shoot at f1.8 and f2.8 and in between, you actually are able to sort of defocus the background, get bokeh in your video. When Sony announced this camera, I was really hoping that they would do something new with the sensor, but they haven't. We still have a 1-inch size sensor. I would have loved a slightly bigger one, but it's 1 inches. It's one of their BSI sensors, 20 megapixel resolution. But what's really cool is that the lens on this thing is actually more like a 24 to 70 mm equivalent in the 35 millimeter format, which is actually a pretty wide to telephoto focal length. The aperture is f1.8 to 2.8, which means when you're shooting at 24mm you get 1.8 aperture, but as you zoom in through the range, the maximum aperture drops to 2.8. So you have sort of those things to take into account, but 2.8 is also still pretty big for an aperture. Allows you to shoot in low light, yes. We'll get into that in a little bit. Now, first off, there's so many features that Sony has built into this camera, which it reinforces the fact that this is a vlogging camera. First off, they've actually developed a specific accessory, this Bluetooth grip, which allows you to control the camera, all the key features. You can take a photo, you can start, stop video recording, you can zoom in and out, and you also have a custom button which allows you to map a specific feature to it. In my case, I've got the background defocuser. So there is a background defocus mode. I just turned it on and it sort of gently blurs out the background. I like the fact that it's a very gentle blur and it's not like everything's out of focus, because that doesn't appear natural. And since that's what the smartphone guys tend to generally go for, it's nice to see that Sony stuck with something that's actually a lot more believable. It would actually come out of a camera. Believable bokeh, right? So there's that. The other key feature on this thing is the microphone. Now Sony's built this microphone array which has got actually 3 microphones in there, and they give you a wind noise filter. It's also called a dead cat filter, which you just slide onto it, and wind reduction happens. So I'm hoping actually that the microphone and the dead cat combination is good enough for you to take your videos in a room with the AC on, so or if there's noise, etc., etc. Third thing is the display. Now this is a fully articulated display, so it swivels outwards, which is how I'm able to see what I'm shooting, and it's also touch enabled. So throughout this video, if I wanted to change the focus, unfortunately I would not be able to do it from the Bluetooth grip, but I could just tap on the display like so and make sure that now my nose is in focus at all points. So shooting with the ZV-1 is actually quite a lot of fun, mostly because it tracks focus of your face. So if I just move my camera around, it just stays in focus. Plus it's just so much handier with this grip, and it has some pretty good image stabilization as well, as you would see in some of the shots I've got with my dog running, walking, etc. Perhaps this one rather is actually a test of the microphones and the ability to cancel out wind noise. So let's begin. Now this is me recording my audio with the fan on my car, the AC on my car at max. This is quite noisy actually as of now, but I don't know what the sound pickup is like over here. I've got, of course, the dead cat on, so that's pretty awesome. Now just gonna turn this down a little bit. Okay, now the AC is at half its strength, and the sound level is basically of whether if you have your AC and your fan on in the room, both perhaps on like little more than quiet. So yeah, there's that. And now to turn it off completely. Now there is no cabin sound, there's just sound coming from the outside, which is the engine noise, and it's actually very, very quiet. So this is what it would be like if you were shooting in, let's say, a room which is got decent soundproofing, but there's still some people maybe outside your room who are making a ruckus, or maybe somebody's watching a movie, so some sound from the outside would still leak in. And we're also going to do a traffic test, don't worry. So we'll have actually a good measure of exactly where this microphone stands, since it's got these 3 capsule microphones and of course also a dead cat on top. So let's check it out. So now that I'm out in the bright outdoors, realize that the camera would not let me shoot at f1.8, and that's because it's just too bright right now. So that's where the ND filter really comes in. So the ZV-1 has a built-in 2-stop ND filter, and engaging that allowed me to drop my aperture down to f1.8, and then the camera was able to get the shutter speed and the ISO within operable limits. And here we are shooting at f1.8 with the background beautifully defocused, and that's sort of what you would want whenever you shoot out and about in some great outdoors. So just look at that. Just look at that. So if you're a vlogger, whether you're a beauty vlogger or a tech vlogger, whatever, there's something that Sony's built in that's actually pretty amazing. So there is a specific mode in the focus settings which basically allows you to do something pretty cool. Now with AF enabled, typically cameras will maintain priority on your face, so if you lift up a product, the focus may not shift, you have to stop, do a whole bunch of things. But with the ZV-1, all you have to do is just lift up the product and the focus shifts, and when you remove it, focus is back. There you go, see? And there. And there. So this is a specific mode. It's called the product showcase mode. You can disable it, in which case when you lift up an object and you put it in towards the front of the frame, the focus is not going to move around, and it's going to maintain priority on your face and tracking your face. So that's actually another thing that's really, really cool about this. Now the idea of shooting this video is to, of course, simulate as much of the real world conditions as possible, like I've said already. So we've got only ambient light, we've got an air conditioner running, we're using the onboard camera, microphone. So it's a pretty solid thing. Now the other aspect of vlogging would be if you're out and about and moving. For example, if you were to say be out walking while you were recording a video, image stabilization comes in pretty handy. Now, I actually recorded some video of my dog. We were in for a morning run together, so chasing him around the park, and turns out the footage is fairly stable. So Sony is using their fairly well-known in-body image stabilization to achieve that. In fact, it's Sony's claim to fame in their mirrorless cameras, their IBIS. So that way, I think this is doing a pretty spot-on job. And what we could do is we could also take a look at how it would actually work if I was to walk out. So cut to that. Now, of course, I've got the ND filter on because, like I said, I wanted to shoot at f1.8, and in order to do that while I'm outdoors in the sun, the camera just couldn't match up. It's despite lowering the ISO completely and boosting the shutter speed, still pushing the aperture up to f2.8. But I want f1.8. I want this soft out of focus frame. So the two-stop ND definitely helps. Actually, fun fact, this is the third time I'm recording this review because ZV-1 in 4K can only record clips of 5 minutes duration. By the time I got done talking about everything I had to talk about, I realized I was not recording. That's how it is. In Sony's defense though, there is a red light that comes on at the front of the camera which tells you when the camera is recording and when it's not. So if it's recording, the light is on. If it's not recording, it's off. But when you're sort of in the flow of things, it's hard to look at the light and like just keep going because your frame shifts and whatnot. So personally, I would have liked if there was a longer record time available, and especially with 4K, like it's just not okay to have a 5-minute recording time. And that honestly I feel would be the one thing that really hampers the vlogging experience, especially if you're outdoors. Like if you're out having an adventure and documenting that, there are certain things that you just cannot repeat. Like if you've missed that moment, you've missed that moment, and that's not okay. So that is one big issue that I hope Sony will fix with the ZV-1. So overall, to sum up the ZV-1, strengths are its focusing system works very well, the video quality is actually pretty amazing, and it's a very well thought out camera for vlogging. The grip works as advertised. It actually makes the whole vlogging experience a lot more convenient. The drawback, however, is two things. One is the battery life, especially if you're out and about, and the second thing is that the 4K video record is limited to just 5 minutes, and that can be very dangerous if because you could miss moments if you're recording and you missed that red light. So that's a quick review of the ZV-1. Hopefully you guys found it helpful, and before you guys leave, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button on our channel, and of course hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any future updates from us. Thank you guys for watching, and as for me, I'm gonna see you in the next one.